Next we have Professor Patrick Maxwell, the Regius Professor in Cambridge, Head of Clinical Medicine, a very, very distinguished clinical academic and leader in our field. And again, another very dear friend. Patrick, you're very welcome.
Well, thank you very much for the lovely invitation. It's a very stimulating day. So Cambridge is just up the road. In fact, you can get there more quickly as long as you go by train than you can to many bits of London. And you heard a bit about the life science environment there from Michael already. I'm actually going to spend, I hope, most of the time giving you a few vignettes of exciting companies, but I thought I would say something about the broad environment. So I really do think we are in the very best of times for breakthroughs in understanding and treating disease. So the last 20 years has seen a complete revolution in genomics. You know, it makes Moore's law look rather trivial. The rate of development in reading the genome has just been extraordinary. So you can now read a genome for almost nothing. The main challenge is storing and analyzing the data. And what's more, we now know how to correct a genome, and we know how to write a genome. So there are people in Cambridge and at other places that are creating genomes that have never occurred in evolution, that are incorporating different amino acids and making proteins and structures that evolution could never have addressed. So as well as genomics, you have this enormous strength in structural and molecular biology. So we are now closing the gap between atoms and protein machines. We can really understand, both with structural analysis, but also with tools like AlphaFold, how proteins fold and work. I think the amount of information about people is extraordinary, and the ability to draw on that information. And crucially, I think we're now able to start to understand what the effects of the environment are interacting with the genome. And I think that's been underappreciated. The ability to interrogate genomics has been so powerful over the last few years that actually the effects of environment have almost been ignored. Now, I think we're heading for a time when we can really bring individual exposures together with genetic information. And then artificial intelligence is transforming the ability to really understand those data sets. I think not only is it the best of time for breakthroughs in understanding disease and treating it, I also think that the UK is in a special place. Again, you've heard something about that from Michael. We do have great universities. The NHS, for all the challenges, is treating 67 million people. There is extremely high uptake across those people. It's free at the point of use. You know, it really is an enormous asset in this. And then we have these big structural long-term investments. UK Biobank, this is extraordinary. 500,000 people. It has produced over 10,000 peer-reviewed publications. The NIHR Bioresource, that is another national effort led from Cambridge, 250,000 individuals. The crucial difference from Biobank is that Biobank has a problem, which is it's very healthy people. They're unusually healthy, and that's good for understanding some things, but the bioresource is focused on diseases. There are rare disease sections within it. And crucially, you can recall those patients to get them to contribute to physiological studies or for trials. Genes and Health, I think, a brilliant resource, which is enriched for in populations where first cousin marriages are common. So there's a huge enrichment of human knockouts, people who completely lack a particular gene. And then Health Data Research UK, another big national asset. And of course, we have major pharmaceutical companies and a really exciting biotech environment. So I think the reason why AJ asked me to speak is I do think Cambridge is an exciting example of this. And it is, I think, rooted in a globally impressive university and in being one of the first universities to really apply quantitative approaches broadly. So the interesting thing about Cambridge is it was entirely for training priests, and you had to be in the Church of England. But bizarrely, everyone had to learn maths. So there was a very high standard of maths. And I think that really underlies Cambridge's contributions in very broad areas. And to some extent, this is a real estate story. So after the war, the hospital moved out to this greenfield site on the edge of the city. So there was a compulsory purchase by the health authority, and they bought that site, the core of the site, freehold, for £100 an acre, which was a very good deal. And around it, so the landowner, the farming family, are now extremely well-to-do. I don't think they've done quite as well as the Howard de Walden estate yet, but it's closing in fast. So they own the freehold of the whole surrounding site. And that site also moved out the Laboratory for Molecular Biology, which has won 12 Nobel Prizes. It developed sequencing, developed cryo-electron microscopy, and perhaps crucially, monoclonal antibodies, 6 of the 10 most valuable medicines in the world. And this is a healthcare site. So it was developed originally for the hospital, and there are 1 million patient contacts there a year. And I think a really special thing is that intermingling of everyday healthcare with nationally funded research, with a great university, and now with AstraZeneca as well, which is that disc-shaped building in the middle. And around Cambridge, there's been an extraordinary flourishing of knowledge-intensive businesses, and more recently of life science companies. So when I went there about 10 years ago, great discovery science. From the clinical school, which I'm responsible for, there was an average of 1 company formed a year. Now it's about 8 companies formed a year. So we've taken a deliberate approach to encourage people to form companies. And I'm going to move on to just telling you some quick vignettes. So the personalized breast cancer program led by Jean Abraham, this enables every patient to have their tumor and their blood whole genome sequence. We've been doing this for a while, before Genomics England really started returning results in a usable time frame. So this is in partnership with Illumina just down the road. And every patient is offered the chance to be in this. The whole genome has come back in 2 weeks, complete with analysis. And that has led to changes in management in about 40% of the women who enter the program. Cited is a company based on detecting esophageal cancer early and detecting pre-malignant changes in the esophagus, Barrett's esophagus. So a little capsule, which you swallow, dissolves in the stomach, it's pulled back up, and it forms a sponge that takes cells from the esophagus. And that is, I think, going to revolutionize the ability to detect esophageal cancer earlier, to monitor the people who are at highest risk, to reduce the rate of endoscopies, and it's now being applied to eosinophilic esophagitis as well. I wanted to mention BioNTech. So, of course, that's not a Cambridge company. It's from Mainz in Germany, academic founder. They have done, so we had the founder come and talk to us in Cambridge, and she was incredibly upbeat about the UK as a place to do business for a life sciences company. So they, through the different political changes, they have had extraordinary ability to talk with ministers. They've done this deal which is going to provide 10,000 patients with personalised cancer vaccines in the UK. There's been very little noise about this, but it is going fantastically well. And Özlem, who came to speak to us, is really excited about doing business in the UK. And there was a new building on the biomedical campus which we thought we were going to be able to use as an accelerator. In fact, BioNTech have rented the whole thing, 3 floors of it, for a major research hub. The next is a story of blood genotyping. So this probably replaces standard blood typing. You can do 10 times as many blood types. You can match blood much more closely. It's cheaper, it's quicker, and particularly for patients with sickle cell disease and thalassemia, this means that they can be much more closely matched. It means they'll have less transfusion reactions and that you can go on transfusing them for longer. I wanted to mention IESO. I think this is an interesting company and perhaps addressing some of what Ian has said is a challenge. So this offers computer-mediated CBT, so what's traditionally a talking therapy for mental health conditions. But this is typing, and you can do it at your convenience with a real therapist at the other end of the line. It's treated over 130,000 patients in the UK, mainly NHS patients. It's now got 750,000 hours of therapy, which it can use AI to analyze and to determine what is a successful treatment and to give sort of cues for the therapist to go down better lines. Finally, Alchemab. I think this is the most exciting company I've come across recently. So as we grow up, we develop antibodies. Some of them are really bad. They lie behind autoimmune diseases. And some of them are really good, and when you're vaccinated, you develop antibodies, and they protect you from infections. The idea behind Alchemab is that as you get old, some of the antibodies you develop may protect you from diseases. And they've identified antibodies across people with very high risk of developing Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and frontotemporal dementia. And a single target across those is associated with not getting demented. And if that turns out, and it's biologically plausible, and you've immediately got an antibody that you could use in humans. And they've also done this with other conditions. So one of their main cohorts has been remarkably healthy centenarians. Why are they so healthy? Well, they may have had good genes, they may have had good life choices, but they may have developed these protective antibodies. So, but it is a very challenging time too. I don't think it is the worst of times, but it is challenging. Rather than framing these things as awful challenges, I'm framing them as opportunities. So the NHS, this is a remarkable opportunity to show for something like this esophageal sponge that this really improves outcomes, that it reduces costs and improves outcomes. But I don't think it is quite there yet for many things, and we've also already discussed the NHS as a market. And I think for Ian's problem statement, rather than this flowering of great science and great ideas tackling unmet medical need, we also need the NHS to be much better at articulating major problems, and its workforce needs to be much more involved in developing solutions to tractable problems. Health data, it's fantastic, but it's also rubbish. And within the UK, it is deeply unconnected. We need to solve that for individual patient care, for planning patient care across geographies, and also for innovation. And I think we should lead it with just delivery of patient care. I think we all know that you all your data should be accessible by everyone and you as a patient. Regulators, I think, a huge opportunity. So one of the things that Özlem said was that the MHRA has been fantastic to deal with this platform of personalized cancer vaccines. And then this is a good time for me to hand over to Tim, because he'll tell you how we'll solve the capital requirements. Tim.
The Harley Street Health District, the home of healthcare since 1860.